Okay, welcome to your first video on probability. Now you might be thinking to yourself, what is probability actually? And probability is just the chance or the likelihood that something is going to happen. So you probably have seen probability a lot in sport, okay? You might be thinking, what are the chances that my team is going to win the footy this weekend? You will probably notice there's a lot of probability in weather when they say, oh, there's a 40% chance that it's going to rain. Okay, that's a probability. In the lottery, obviously, there's a probability that you might win, but obviously it's very unlikely that you'll win the lottery. And in maybe medicine or genetics, you might say, what's the probability my child will be a boy or a girl? Or what's the probability they'll have blue eyes? And that's going to depend on whatever color eyes the parents have. Okay, so those are just a few examples of where you might see probability. Now we can measure probability numerically, so we can calculate what a probability is. And we usually express that as a fraction, a decimal, or a percentage. Okay, we measure probability on a scale from 0 to 1. Now, if something has a probability of 0, that means it's impossible that it's going to happen. So, for example, you might say, ooh, what are the chances that we are not going to have any more maths homework this year? And that's impossible. Okay, you definitely will have more maths homework this year. Sorry about that. But that would be an example of something that is impossible, so it would have a probability of 0. Something that has a probability of 1, on the other hand, is something that is certainly going to happen. So you might say, what's the probability the sun is going to come up tomorrow? Well, that's certain. The sun comes up every day, okay? So that has a probability of 1. In the middle, then, we'd have things that are what we call an even chance, okay? So you might hear the phrase, oh, we've got a 50-50 chance of that happening. Okay, so that's something that's got a probability of a half. So an example of that is if you flip a coin and guess if you get heads or tails, there's only two choices there, heads or tails. So you have a 50% chance of guessing the correct outcome. So that's where you'd have an even chance in probability. Okay, if something is between a half and 1, then we say it is a likely event to happen. And the closer you are to 1, the more likely it is that this probability will happen. If something is between 0 and a half, then we would say it's unlikely it's going to happen. And of course, the closer to 0 you are, the more unlikely it is. Now, I did mention that you can express these as a fraction, decimal, or percentage. So I've got them as fractions there. If you have them as a decimal, obviously 0 is just 0 as a decimal. An even chance would be 0.5, and certain is 1. Or if you had these as percentages, we would have 0%, 50%, or 100%. Most of the questions we do will probably deal in fractions or decimals.